First of all, I'd like to thank you all for coming along, and I'd also like to thank Crawford, who are sponsoring this session. My name's Susan Maguire. I'm the Operations Manager for the British Dermatological Nursing Group, and I'm here to talk about sun-sensible children. I think this presentation was planned to coincide with the start of spring, and I think that happened last week, so we're back into winter again. I know us as nurses, we can influence a lot, but unfortunately the weather isn't one of them. I'm just going to talk a little bit about some facts in relation to skin cancer. Most of my presentation will be about how to protect our children in the sun. I'll talk a little bit about vitamin D in the sun because I know there's been a lot of information in the press, and I'll just finish about talking about Crawford's Sun Sensible Children's campaign. So, unfortunately, skin cancer is one of the most common cancers that we see in the UK. It can be split into two groups, melanoma and non-melanoma. The incidence of melanoma has increased by 50% in the UK in the last 10 years. And basal cell carcinomas, which fall into the non-melanoma group, they've increased by 130% over the last 20 years in the UK. So it is a problem for all of us. Most skin cancers can be seen in sun-exposed areas on the head and the neck and the arms and the legs. So we know that there's a direct link between sun exposure and skin cancers. And it's estimated that 4 out of 5 skin cancers are preventable through safe sun practices, and that's why I'm along here today. And just some facts in relation to malignant melanoma. Each day, 34 people are diagnosed with malignant melanoma in the UK. And 7 people each day die from skin cancer in some shape or form. And if we look at the younger age group, the 15 to 34-year-olds, malignant melanomas are disproportionately high within this group of individuals. And it's indeed the second most common cancer in this group. So if we can do something with the younger population to influence their behaviours, that we can help to reduce these alarming statistics. So the sun does lots of different things whenever it hits our skin, and this is only a very basic slide. UVA penetrates the skin to much deeper levels and affects the collagen and the elastin in our skin. And then UVB, it penetrates the upper layers of our skin, and that's the bit that causes sunburn. It also stimulates melanocytes to produce melanin, and that's what gives us a tan. And a tan is our way of trying to protect ourselves from further damage. Now, I know there's been a lot of debate about whether a tan is attractive, and I'm sure most of you will agree that these young gentlemen are indeed attractive, and whether the tan helps that or not. But do you say the same about this? Deeply tanned lady here. And I know we shouldn't use scare tactics with our patients, but I think if that's one picture that you can show younger children, particularly young girls, that's something that will stop them sitting out in the sun. So why is sun protection important for our children? As with everything else, their skin is fragile, it's developing, it's more likely to become damaged. Children tend to spend more time out in the sun. It's estimated that more than half of our lifetime exposure to sun occurs during childhood. We do know that the prolonged overexposure to sun and the incidence of developing sunburns under the age of 15 will lead to skin cancers in later life. So if we can stop our children being out in the sun for long periods of time and stop them from developing skin cancer or getting sunburn, it's a good thing to do. And obviously children aren't able to take their own responsibility for their sun protection. This was a survey that was undertaken by Cancer Research UK, and it looked at the general public's perception of skin cancer. So the majority of people were aware that overexposure to sun and sunburn leads to skin cancer. But whenever we looked at more specifically at parents' views, 10% of parents never applied sunscreen to their children, and a quarter of the parents didn't think it was necessary to put sunscreen on before their child went to school. And I think this goes back to the wrong view that you only need to use sunscreens when you're sunbathing, and sunbathing is something that you do when you're on your holidays. And I think if we can do a lot to change that belief and get children to put sunscreen on more often, that we will help to reduce the incidence of skin cancer. So being sun sensible involves three things. Firstly, spending more time in the shade, covering up and applying sunscreen. I'm sure you've all heard of the Australian slip, slap, slop. So you slip into the shade, you slap some clothes on, and you slop some sunscreen on. Babies and young children, should be kept out of direct sunlight. Long gone are the days where we strip babies and children down to their nappies and put them out in the sun to bake for the day. And we need to spend more time in the shade between 11 and 3. It's when UVB is highest, the sun is highest in the sky, the levels of UVB are highest, and that's the time you're more likely to get sunburnt. And a good rule of thumb is if your shadow's smaller than you, it's time to go into the shade. Covering up, this is the best way to protect our skin, and I'm talking about clothes, about hats and about sunglasses. I know there's lots of companies that provide clothing that is specifically designed for sun protection, and a lot of the high street manufacturers put some kind of sun rating on or sun protection rating on their clothes. But a good rule of thumb is that if you can see your hand through the fabric, the sun can get through too. And it's particularly important to clothes that are older, that have been washed quite a lot, or indeed wet. The sun can get through. And we often forget about areas. We're very good at putting hats on children. We're not very good about protecting their necks. And the shoulders, it's an area that's going to be directly affected by the sun, so it's important that we cover up. And the last bit is using sunscreen. We've all heard about SPF, so sun protection factor. This is the bit that protects us against UVB. If you burn after 5 minutes in the sun, an SPF of 15 means you can go out for 5 minutes before you will burn. And then in the UK, we use a star rating that shows the protection against UVA. Okay, it's sometimes kind of a little bit confusing because it measures its protection in relation to UVB. From a dermatology point of view, we would recommend an SPF of at least 30. NICE have said SPF of 15. 15 is probably high enough and gives us good enough protection, but we tend not to put on enough sunscreen, and we tend not to put on enough throughout the day. We don't put it on regularly enough. I think when you use sunscreen, it's applied generously. More is better. Half a handful of cream is enough to cover an average child with sunscreen. So if you buy that jar of sunscreen, it's going to last. You should use it up much more quickly. It's not going to last for a full year. We miss areas when we apply sunscreen. The back is a commonly missed area. It's difficult to put sunscreen on our own backs. But we also miss the side of the neck, the temples and the ears. They're areas that we need. They're always out in the sun, so we need to make sure we cover them. We need to apply sunscreen before we go into the sun. Once the sun hits our skin, the damage is already occurring, so we need to put it on before we go out. And we need to reapply it regularly throughout the day. Between 2 and 4 hours, we need to reapply it, or more often if there's excessive sweating, or the child is swimming, or they're rubbing themselves with a towel. You'd be pleased to know that the most expensive isn't necessarily the best sunscreen. Their sunscreens are available in a wide range of costs to suit everyone. And they're also available in a range of vehicles. There's lotions, there's gels, sprays, roll-ons to encourage the younger population to apply sunscreen. And please be aware of some unhelpful claims in sunscreen packaging. Things like once a day, sunblock or total protection. We need to apply sunscreen more than once a day. And there's no sunscreen that gives us complete coverage. There's no complete sunblock. Even the factor 60s plus, they give us 98% coverage. So which sunscreen is best for our children? You want to use one that offers both protection for UVB and UVA. If you're particularly concerned about additives within some products, there are ones available specifically for children or for sensitive skin, but there's no reason why children can't use sunscreen that the rest of the family use. Want something that's quick and easy to apply. If it's going to take you an hour and a half to apply sunscreen and then half an hour for it all to soak in, we don't have 2 extra hours within our day, so we want something that's quick and simple to use. Something that the child can do themselves to encourage them to get into the way of doing it every day. If they can get up and brush their teeth and apply their sunscreen, it becomes more routine. It's something that we'll all do. And obviously something that's easy to carry. There's sunscreen available in small amounts that children can take to school with them and they can use throughout the day themselves. And obviously the best sunscreen for a child is the one that they'll actually use. If they don't like the smell, they don't like how it feels on their skin, they're never going to use it. So a lot of time it's hit and miss with children as to which one suits them the best. I'm just going to briefly touch on vitamin D because I know there's been lots of information in the press in the last year or so. We do know that ultraviolet radiation from the sun is a major contribution factor to developing skin cancers, but we also know that it's the best source of vitamin D, and it's very much about balancing the risk of overexposing our children to too much sun, that they will develop skin cancers, and also maintaining adequate levels of vitamin D. We know what the normal range for vitamin D is, but we don't know what the optimal range is, what the optimal level is. And there's lots of evidence saying that vitamin D protects against other skin cancers or other cancers and heart disease and diabetes. The evidence for that is inconclusive at present. But we also know that there are dietary sources and there's supplements that can help with vitamin D levels. A lot in the press says that we all should go out in the sun for half an hour each day to build up our levels of vitamin D. Unfortunately, there's no one size fits all whenever we talk about sun exposure for vitamin D. It's very much influenced by the environment and about the physical and personal attributes of the individual patient. This group of organisations got together a few years ago to come up with a consensus statement in relation to vitamin D. And they say that their best estimate is that every day casual exposure to sunlight is enough for us to have adequate levels of vitamin D, given that no sunscreen is a sunblock. Okay, so we are building up. And sunbeds, just a word of caution, are not a safe alternative and should never be used under any circumstances. So I'll just finish by talking about Crawfords' campaign, Sun Sensible School campaign. It's supported by the organisation I work for, plus some others. Lots of educational resources and information available for you and for schools and for teachers. That's the website, sunsense.co.uk, or you can call over at the Crawford stand for more information. They've put together little packs like this, and then there's lots of online stuff as well. So just in conclusion, I hope that we're not trying to stop children from going out in the sun. It's a part of your growing up of develop, but as long as they're safe in the sun. So it's important that we provide protection, an environment where our children can be sensible in the sun, and we need to educate to influence the knowledge and the practices of both children and parents. And finally, we need to collaborate with other people, with other healthcare professionals, with teachers and with the wider general public, so that we all deliver this sun safety message. That's all I have to say, so thank you for coming along, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.